Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this ELIXIR webinar. And today I will present you an introduction to our latest big effort, ELIXIR-EXCELERATE. So it's 2 o'clock, so I will start. The webinar is also recorded, and it will be made available on our YouTube channel after the talk. And after the presentation, we will open up for a question and answer session. And the question and answer session will not be recorded on YouTube. You will be pleased to know. So I think it will be much more of an interactive session then. So very welcome to all of you. I'm happy to see that so many of you have joined today. So I hope you will find this interesting and useful. So ELIXIR-EXCELERATE is our largest big effort, and it's the big implementation project of ELIXIR. So ELIXIR we were very happy in last year in 2014, where we were prioritized for implementation by ESFRI, the European Member States Forum for Research Infrastructure. And following that prioritization, we were awarded a implementation grant under the InfraDev3 call from the European Commission's Horizon 2020 Research Infrastructure Program. And ELIXIR-EXCELERATE is our response to this call, and it has two aspects. It is there to implement the ELIXIR infrastructure, and the other aspect of the InfraDev3 call was to support the early operations of ELIXIR as a research infrastructure. And in this talk, I will try to explain how we aim to address these two aspects of the InfraDev3 call. So ELIXIR, of course, is a research infrastructure, is a distributed research infrastructure that links up national bioinformatics services and aim to stitch them together into a coordinated and coherent European infrastructure for life science data. And being distributed research infrastructure is really, I think, is a key theme of the ELIXIR-EXCELERATE project. It's also the solution to the big challenge in data management for life science. So the real reason that we are distributed is, of course, that biology and data production in the life sciences is distributed and very heterogeneous. And so this image is just trying to illustrate this. It shows an image or a map of the next generation sequencing capabilities in Europe. And as you see, there are very many places in Europe with capabilities of generating large-scale data sets and also consume large-scale data sets. And our challenge is, of course, to ensure that all these scientists have access to good data management services, both for community benefit, but also to meet increasingly funder requirement on open access and open data policies. But they don't only need to steward and submit and archive their data. They also need to retrieve the data from all these other scientists for analysis and comparison. And so this means that we need to first collect the data. We may need to curate it, annotate the data, and then distribute it back out to the 500,000 approximately life scientists in Europe. So this is a real and increasingly difficult challenge. And so that, of course, requires a concerted effort that ties together local data management efforts, national data management efforts, and international resources and efforts. And this is not the least the challenge of maintaining our shared archives for the future and making sure that they are sustained for the long term. And our response to that is, of course, to tie together efforts that happens at the local level and the national level through our ELIXIR nodes, so the communities and the networks and the infrastructures in the member states. And we tie this together into ELIXIR Europe, which is the coordinated effort of all of these national nodes. And in the talk and through the project, I hope it will be clear to you how we aim to coordinate, but also to sustain and strengthen these national communities so that the whole of Europe get access to professional life science data services. And to illustrate some of these challenges, I've made a little cartoon, or I picked a cartoon from one of the use cases in the project. And this particular one is metagenomics, but it could be applied to many other fields of life science. But I think metagenomics is a very, very good illustration, not only of why you need capabilities for large-scale submission and access of data, but also of the value of the long-term management of these data resources. Metagenomics, of course, relies on our ability to extract annotations, functional assignments, and identify organisms in the reference data sets. And that would not be possible unless we had archived and carefully curated reference data sets and knowledge bases over many, many, many years. And so for this to work, it means that we need to have data submitted into repositories, and that needs data standards. It also needs tools and training of the scientists to do the submission. We need to support the curation of our reference data sets and knowledge in knowledge bases such as UniProt. We need high-quality annotations of the data sets, and I think this is an increasingly a big challenge for many fields of research. And we need that not only for model organisms and human research, but actually for very many species. And this is, I'll come back to this, but this is something we're trying to address in the project. But metagenomics doesn't only rely on these primary archives and knowledge bases, it also makes use of many value-add resources that use the primary archives and then, such as the protein family databases, enrich them with further analysis and annotation. And of course, that is then used by the users in our ELIXIR nodes through local copies of the databases, through, for instance, cloud infrastructures, or by the many bioinformatic toolkits available. And of course, all of these resources need to work together, so that's a big interoperability challenge. You need to distribute it out through the Europe and make it available increasingly in shared cloud environments. That's a challenge for our compute platform. And finally, of course, we need to make sure that the users and the resource providers are trained to make use of this infrastructure. So that's something we're looking to address in our large training program. But I come back to this. So ELIXIR deliver services on our national nodes, and these are building on national strength, they're building on national priorities, and they're also funded out of national research funding. And the ELIXIR Hub will then try to coordinate this distributed organization, and it really, the distributed organization and the effectiveness of ELIXIR really rests on our ability to orchestrate national services into these shared service platforms, the training, the compute, the interoperability, and our data platforms. And so the ELIXIR-EXCELERATE project really aims to bring all of this together and try to deliver not only the data and the services, but we need to strengthen then the bioinformatics capability throughout Europe. We need to link out to our user communities and make sure that they can make best use and have the appropriate interfaces and annotations of data and of our services. And of course, this needs to be effectively coordinated and governed. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to sustain for the long term. And I see really the coordination and governance as a foundation for sustainability with the communities. So ELIXIR-EXCELERATE is a very big project. It has in total 19 million euros over 4 years in funding. It has 41 partners, and those are ELIXIR node institutes, or in the case of our observers, prospective node institutes, and they are distributed over 15 countries currently. So these are the ELIXIR member states, and hopefully the 12 or the 13 ELIXIR member states, and hopefully we grow them to 15 or 16 countries by the end of the year. So it really is a large effort that's distributed over many European countries and involves a very large number of scientists in our ELIXIR nodes. Despite being a big project, I think it has a very simple structure. So essentially, it's built on three pillars or three themes. And the first is, of course, to build up and coordinate our ELIXIR platforms. And we have a series of work packages that deliver the different aspects of the platform. We also have 4 work packages, we call them use cases, that really drives the usage and the embedding of the ELIXIR services in the different user communities, the marine research community, a plant science and agriculture research community, rare diseases, and human data management and the human genomics research community. And these two major efforts are then supported by 3 supporting work packages, which really are there to embed and strengthen our national nodes, but also to create and deliver effective operations that really, as I said, are the foundation for a long-term sustained service platform. So what I'd like to do now in a couple of slides is to go through the different work packages and try to illustrate how they come together to deliver our sort of coordinated service platform. And then from there, discuss some of our use cases and what we aim to achieve with the user communities based on these service platforms. So the first platform and the first work package is the data work package, and this really address I think 2 critical gaps to deliver both a unified framework to support the operations of bioinformatics resources, but really through supporting them with monitoring and value statement, help them to reach long-term sustainability and the resilience we need to ensure that data is available to the community for long term. But the other part of this work package, I think, is a big gap, and that is the integration of the literature with the data. So increasingly, we see a strong coupling between data resources, data repositories, knowledge bases, and the literature repositories such as PubMed Central or European PubMed Central. And through efforts in work package 3, we aim to strengthen that link, and really one of the outcomes there is to help the biocurators, so the expert curators that work in many of the bioinformatics resources, and really create the foundation knowledge that we all use through these reference archives. And I think this is really important to recognize the importance and the value of curation for bioinformatics resources and for the larger biology community. And hopefully through this work package, we can help to strengthen that really important aspect of the bioinformatics service landscape. But there is also a more human side of data management, and this is something that we address through what, and I'll come back to this, what we call our node development program, and that is to create human expert networks with the experts and the user support scientists that work across Europe to help, in the case of the data nodes network, the data submitters and the users who want to make use and import and distribute reference data sets to the local communities. And the other really important ELIXIR-wide expert network that we're creating is on genome annotation. And as I said before, this is a current gap. I think it's really important that to deliver high quality annotation, and increasingly that is of course a requirement for as a starting point for many biology studies. And so what we look to do is to bring together the experts that do genome annotation today and to try to help them to scale and sustain both data quality and their effort through this expert network. And so that's hopefully both of these things are we'll come back to in future webinars, but I think this is important and really quite interesting to see how we can create these expert networks across Europe. But of course, data also need tools to be useful to the community. And in the tools arena, I think we have 2 major efforts. So the first is our tools and data services registry, the bioregistry, where we are federate and community curating tools to find and define an overview and a portal for tools discovery in Europe. But it's not only for users to discover the tools, it should also deliver something back to the tool providers. And in particular, we're looking to help tool providers to do things like support service monitoring or resource integration, promote the interoperability between different tools. And something which I think is really interesting, and we have a separate work package on this, is to help to run community benchmarking. So I think we all recognize the value that community benchmarking has given, or community benchmarking exercises have given into the tools development communities. These are also often quite large efforts. I think they have been very, very valuable in many communities, not only for the tools providers in helping them to develop the science around the different tools or the different disciplines, but often as a byproduct, they also deliver very high value and well curated reference data sets that can be used by a much, much larger community. So in our work package 2, we are really looking to develop organized relationships with the communities that run and create tools benchmarking and help them to develop and maintain a more generic infrastructure to support the benchmarking, and in particular the back-end data infrastructure to support benchmarking, and also help to develop procedures and standards and outreach efforts that help the communities come together to deliver the benchmarking. And I think it's really important that we run this as a community support exercise. It is not the role of an infrastructure to benchmark and rate tools. I think it's a much more useful approach to create an environment where the communities easily can drive benchmarking exercises and then recognize that these benchmarking exercises deliver a lasting value, not only for the tools community, but also for the users of these tools and for the community, the life science community at large, through the creation of reference data sets. Of course, all of this needs to come together, and the tools and the services need to work together, and this is the role of our interoperability or standards package. And through this work package, we are looking to consolidate what we've called the ELIXIR interoperability backbone, but that's really a unified approach, but also a service layer brought together from the various node services that look at issues such as identity management, data formats, experimental reporting guidelines. I think that's really important and also something that underpins training and the data efforts, provenance and annotation of data from the original source. It should help to define agreements on identifiers and metadata descriptions. And so all of these are efforts that underpin good data stewardship and help the data management within many of the research projects in Europe. But it's also important to recognize that all of this is really a prerequisite for the open data policies that many funded now are rolling out. Open data, unless you create it, annotate it well, and store it so that it can be accessed and reused by a larger research community, isn't necessarily delivering a lot of value. And I think through this work package, we will really help, also through a series of practical workshops that we call Bring Your Own Data, really to promote that good data management or good data stewardship, so that the research data will be useful for a larger research community also in the future. Of course, doing this in Europe in isolation isn't very useful, and so this work package also will look to have strong links with global and other major efforts. We know that in the US, for instance, the BD2K initiative are founded with very, very similar objectives, and of course we have emerging links with the BD2K that we are looking to strengthen. And many of our partners in Europe are also partners in the major US efforts. So I think there is a good foundation here to make sure that we really define a global approach. And of course, science is a global endeavor, so no one gains from having a fragmented approach to data management. The fourth platform for ELIXIR is our compute platform, and the platform is broader than the name may imply. So this is not only looking at compute services and things like distributed cloud infrastructures, but it also addresses issues such as distribution and storage of data and user authentication and access. And in particular, I think the access and distribution of data with the very rapidly growing data volumes in the life sciences is going to be a really important and difficult task to deal with. The other part of this work package is really to help ELIXIR to manage our external technical dependencies with e-infrastructures, the European e-infrastructures, but also with the e-infrastructures and the technical services available in the different nodes. And of course, in many of our nodes and many of the countries, the compute platforms are very well harmonized with the other S3 research infrastructures, such as the biobanking infrastructure or the imaging infrastructure. And of course, it's our job also both at the European and at the national level to make sure that this is a smooth collaboration and that we're supporting the whole life science research community and not only the bioinformatics community. And the final platform is the training platform. And I think this is really a critical success factor for ELIXIR, is to have a strong and sustainable training infrastructure. I think there is also a major opportunity for ELIXIR as a distributed infrastructure to reach out into users in the whole of Europe. Through our nodes, we have representation at, if not all, so most of the major institutes and research centers in Europe. And I think that gives us a very strong position to help to deliver not only the technical infrastructure for training, but also the training expertise, and importantly, mechanism to safeguard the quality of training. And so when we talk about training in ELIXIR, it is about training the users, but it is also to provide support and training to the resource providers, to the bioinformatics community that is developing and maintaining the data resources and the tools that we all rely on. And I think a third component, which is really important here, is to recognize that there is a very significant skills gap in the area of bioinformatics. And so we need to look at scalable training provision. It can't all be face-to-face. And we're looking at issues such as, or solutions such as e-learning to help to scale the training efforts. We're off to a good start in training, and I think one of the things that we've discovered, that there is a very large need for training in data management. We've started to meet that through efforts such as the data carpentry or the software carpentry, and I think going forward we will, through primarily in the first instance train the trainer instances, help to strengthen the national training capabilities in the general area of data management and bioinformatics. And so this journey through our platforms is taking a very technical view on ELIXIR, but of course this needs to be available in our nodes. And I've said this many times, it hinges on our ability to reach out and develop and maintain strong national communities. And we're addressing this in a separate work package that we call the Node Development Program. And it hinges on three pillars, or it builds on three bases. And the first one is the scientific services, the genome annotation network and the data nodes network. So the first examples of several, I hope, where we're trying to bring together experts across Europe and experts that are really providing advanced user support or services within the national communities. But we also need to help the nodes to build their communities, to strengthen their communities. And so there is an operational and management aspect of this, where we look at the legal agreements and the organizational models for national nodes, but also how you can effectively reach out and strengthen national communities. And this will be addressed through things like staff exchange programs and training efforts. And we know that several of our nodes have run for many years very effective community engagement exercises at national level, and so those are of course examples to follow. And the third pillar here is around sustainability and sustained national funding, and so we're looking at how to help the nodes to develop their and harmonize the funding proposals, but for some of the nodes, importantly, also looking at how we can access structural funds. So a part of this work package is a training program for accessing structural funds and looking at some of the good examples that we've had in the past of using structural funds in some of the member states to build bioinformatics capacity. So this is the platform building part, and so this is the part of the project that really aiming to implement a long-term bioinformatics infrastructure for Europe. Of course, the infrastructure is there to be used by the scientific communities, and so I'd like to give you a quick overview of our use cases and how we're looking to embed and drive the usage of this infrastructure in different user communities. And the first use case is for the marine sciences, where we're also reaching out to our sister infrastructure in the marine sciences, EMBRC. But here we're looking specifically at metagenomics as a use case, not only for fundamental research, but also for applied research. There are many examples of applied research projects with strong industrial collaboration in the area of metagenomics. What we're specifically trying to address are some of the challenges in the marine, which is that annotations and standards are lagging behind data annotation or data generation or quite significantly lagging behind data generation for marine organisms. And so we're looking to see if we can strengthen databases specific for marine organism and metagenomics, how we can standardize some of the quality assurance processes to help develop better tools and pipelines for metagenomic analysis, and also to make sure that there are search engines that are geared towards the marine community and the users, so they get easy access to those data sets that are out there. And of course, all of this needs a very strong, both hands-on data management expert component to what we call our Bring Your Own Data workshops, but also training for end users. In the plant sciences, we're looking to improve the integration of access of genotype and phenotype data for both crop and forest plants. And this is looking at some of the fundamental infrastructure aspects, such as controlled vocabularies and phenotype APIs, so that the participants, and this work package has quite a few participants from different European efforts, and so they can advertise the availability of their data to the research community. It will also specifically look to annotate and submit key exemplar data sets to relevant public archives so that it can be used by the larger research community. And it also have an industry outreach component to help to bring in many of the industry users in this area. And again, there is a strong training component and a need for training in the plant science, or for bioinformatics for the plant sciences. In the biomedical area, we have two use cases, and the first one is to look at the human genomics and to create a framework and strengthen the framework for secure archiving, dissemination, and analysis of human access controlled data. And so this is, of course, a big topic for many of our nodes. There are many data sets out there, and in many fields you would need to grow the size of your data sets and cohorts to be able to identify rare variants or drivers of disease. And so specifically we will look at some of the current bottlenecks, which are secure data submission tools, how you create distributed projects. Not all of this data will get a passport and travel across Europe, and so we really need to strengthen the federation aspects of data management, and that also include federated authentication systems and secure clouds and large-scale secure data management. The other biomedical use case is specifically looking at rare disease research, and you can see how these two tie together because, of course, in rare diseases, there is a very strong driver to share genomics data across Europe, but the rare disease use case will also work in close collaboration with some of the other rare disease investments, such as RD Connect, and try to make sure that we integrate the extensive data resource and tools that are being developed in the context of rare disease research and make those available across Europe. Again, it highlights the importance and usefulness of benchmarking and standardization efforts. And so this work package specifically will look at some of the benchmarking and standardization services that the rare disease community needs. And again, there's a very strong outreach and training component to the user community that will probably include quite a few jamborees to annotate and specifically quality control and aggregate reference data sets for different rare diseases. So in this, what is probably a tour de force through the ELIXIR project, I hope I've convinced you, or I tried to illustrate how we are taking a very comprehensive approach to the life cycle of biological data, and really through our platforms and use cases try to provide very practical, not only tools and resources, but also training, guidance and standards for data management across the whole life cycle, from generation submission into the archives down to analysis, and also the long-term sustained storage, the policies and the metadata curation that's needed for long-term reuse and value of these data sets. So with that, I'd like to end this overview of the ELIXIR project, and I'd like to do that to thank all the people that have been involved in not only developing the project proposal and the project, but also the ELIXIR infrastructure. So this is not only the head of nodes, so the leaders of the national nodes, but also our two networks of training and technical coordinators, plus a very large number of technical experts from the different ELIXIR nodes. And in the development of the ELIXIR program and this grant proposal, over 100 scientists from across Europe was involved. So I'm not going to show an acknowledgement slide, but we know who you are, and we are very, very thankful for all your engagement. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.